Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of the Bill of Rights. Now, as you know, the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments that were given to the Constitution. Just a little background story. So the Constitution was written and it was passed, but a lot of the people that had signed onto it were not so happy that it didn't spell out more our rights as citizens, and they felt that it should be, because they felt in the future those things could be passed up, even though they knew that they meant for them to be in the Constitution, but they weren't. So they created these amendments. Our First Amendment talks about the fact there's no established religion as a part of the federal or state governments. We are free to believe the way that we choose to believe. So we're free to exercise our religion any way we want to. We have freedom of speech under the First Amendment, freedom of the press. And we also have the freedom to assemble peaceably. Now, a lot of these things actually help support the religious freedom that they came here for. And then the last thing I think is really interesting is the freedom to petition redress of grievances imposed by the federal government. So they gave us the opportunity to be able to say, I do not like this, I am going to change this, because I don't feel that this is right and that it is unconstitutional. And so it gives us that power as the people to be able to do those things. With the second one, this gives us the chance to have what they call well-regulated militias, so we're allowed to have an army, essentially. Also the right to keep and bear arms. Now, I would like to really emphasize the wording they used is the right to keep and bear arms. That is our right. Our Second Amendment right is to have firearms and to be able to use them with proper authority or in proper situations. And that's something that's really big right now. There's been a lot of problems with people who are keeping and bearing arms under and misusing them. And so there's a lot of restrictions that are going on around the states now. And it's, depending on who you talk to, a very, very touchy subject. But I'm here to tell you, according to the Second Amendment, that we have the right to keep and bear arms. And that is the gospel truth here. The third one is came up a lot when they were having the American Revolution. There was a problem with keeping the soldiers in people's homes. It was something that was forced a lot by the British at the time. And so the Third Amendment is that no soldier can be kept in a home during wartime or peace. And so that is just not acceptable for the government to impose us to keep soldiers in a citizen's home. The fourth one, we have a lot most people know about. They don't know technically it's the Fourth Amendment, but when you're watching like CSI or Psych or whatever, you have what's called a search warrant, and that's actually the Fourth Amendment right, is to have the right to not have your home searched any time just for no reason. There has to be what we call probable cause, and so through that probable cause, then you're able to get a search warrant, and then you're able to go into a home. But there's no search and seizure there. So that's what that Fourth Amendment right talks more about, and it's, as you know, something you're actually familiar with. So I think that's really cool. So number 5 is what we call no double jeopardy, and it has nothing to do with Alex Trebek, but it has more to do with if you have a case and that case is dismissed, or whoever's found guilty or not guilty, you cannot be tried again for the same crime, given the same evidences. And I know if you watch different court shows, then you'll see that that's very evident, that you can't just refile if you're unhappy with how it turned out. That's what you're given, that's what you have to go with. Also, a part of that is no deprivation of life, liberty, and life, liberty, and property without due process. It's again another thing that you hear a lot in these shows. Due process underneath the law, of course, means that you get a fair trial. And so those inalienable rights that I've talked about in another video is one of these, is those things: life, liberty, and property, which I also equated to the pursuit of happiness. These things cannot be taken without due process of law, and that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And then the last thing inside of that amendment is that you cannot witness against yourself. Of course, people have the right to confess and also the right to remain silent, but under this Fifth Amendment, you don't have you can't witness against yourself. And so under the Sixth Amendment, it is all persons get a trial with an impartial jury within that district. And so when you have a problem that arises, wherever that problem occurred, whether it be, in this case it's criminal, that is the area in which you shall be tried. That jurisdiction, those laws for that area and that land. And so that's what that talks about, and that is in criminal cases. Number 7 is trial by jury in common law when damages exceed, and when they wrote the amendment it was $20, which was a lot of money back then. And so when your damages are in a certain, really from X amount of dollars and up, it is enough to be able to, as you know, sue somebody or try to do something different, or try to get that money recovered, and so that is actually your 7th Amendment right. Going on to the 8th Amendment, there's no excessive bail, fines, and also no cruel and unusual punishment. And so in this case, it's just underlining the things that we can be punished with. We can be punished fairly, and we can be punished with a fine, but they cannot be excessive, and also the punishments cannot be cruel or unusual. And so that comes up a lot more in military cases, the cruel and unusual punishment portion. Number 9 really is one of my favorites, because basically what it's saying is you can't bend the rules. And, no matter which way you want to go, the laws are the laws. And then also, the 10th Amendment is that the states are given every power that the federal government is not over. And so in another video I talked about what those powers were. And so when the Constitution was first set up, those powers that the federal government were given were to mint money, to regulate interstate commerce, to make treaties, and work with other foreign affairs. And they were also able to make laws to help uphold these different things, and to make an army and a navy. And so those were the things that they were given. So the 10th Amendment really describes that anything that's not those 5 things is given to the state. The state is the ones that are supposed to cover anything else that is not covered within those 5 things. And so that's kind of the Bill of Rights in a nutshell. Like I said, it's the first 10 amendments, and these were the things that the men that founded this country found to be very important, to make sure that we understood this is what the Constitution is saying. These are the rights they wanted to give us. And actually the Bill of Rights was created taking different rights that were most favorable from all of the different little states that they had at the time. And so when they had all these people submit, they found that these were the similarities. And so this was the common interest of the people at that time, along with those governing officials who had who were worried about these things. These were all ended up being very similar, and it kind of surprised them, to be honest, that they were. But in the end, it goes back to what I said in another video about the political parties, is that we all have common interests and we all have common desires, and these Bill of Rights are those things.